I wish to be called by name, and please call me, and there's a blank line there. Sometimes people find just great affirmation of their dignity and their worth when they're called by name. This has roots in our mission of being focused on human dignity, where even my recollection of being in Calcutta and serving in the mission there, in the Home for the Dying, one of my most profound memories was the first day that I walked in, and I had no clue what I was supposed to do. And I couldn't speak to any of the men who were there in the beds. There were probably 50 or so men lined up in cots that were, sitting off the floor just by a foot or so. And everything was clean in the space, which was beautiful, because when you walked outside in Calcutta, everything was dirty. Literally everything was covered in like a dirt, a dust from just being dirty outside. But you walked in and it wasn't the highest technology, but it was clean and it was comfortable. And actually, you all have some pretty high technology here in this facility, but it's also clean. It's beautiful. You walk in and you feel like you can kind of let your breath out if you're somebody who's just walked through the streets to get here. Not all that different from Mother Teresa's missions in Calcutta. But when I sat down on that bed, I was handed a bowl, and it had some food in it. It was lunchtime, and one of the sisters asked me to help to feed one of the men. So I sat down. I couldn't speak his language. He couldn't speak my language. And he was missing one of his legs and the tip of one of his arms as well. I believe he had leprosy. And he was a man who practiced the Hindu faith. I had very little, as far as I knew, in common with this person. And I sat next to him. I was kind of worried. I was kind of afraid. And he looked at me, and he had a big smile on his face. And he said, Asim. And I looked at him, and I said, Asim? And then he nodded and smiled. And that was his name. And then he pointed at me with the universal sign of a question mark, right? So what's your name? They can figure that out. And I said, Paul. So we spent the next maybe 40 minutes saying nothing to each other except Asim and Paul. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We had settled at that a lot. I would give him a spoonful of food. He'd smile and he'd say, Paul. And I'd say, yes. I did say yes. And then Asim. And so in this encounter of 40 minutes, there were no words spoken except our two names to one another. And beyond that, there was nothing else really that I could do other than offer him food, which was offered to me to offer to him. But there was something really beautiful about that. And when I think back about it, my personal regret about it is that he smiled first when I was sitting at the edge of his bed. He let me know it was okay. And as he was sitting there, he did two things. He smiled, he said his name, and he said my name. And that formed a connection that was there.